Back with another episode of Get the Guac. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Joining me today is a very special guest, Eddie Hopkins. Now, I had to write down just a few of the different roles he has had in the town and the county. Currently, the town Administrator of Bel Air, former Director of Department of Emergency Services for Harford County, Board Chairman, a.k.a. Mayor of Bel Air, Chief Deputy of Harford County Sheriff's Office, Chief Volunteer Fire Department, and current doggy dad to Milo and Poppy.
And a new one, Bear.
And Bear. All right, hold on. Let me adjust that. So, first question is, what haven't you done for Bel Air and the Harford County community?
I'm not sure. I grew up in a family that was largely centralized in public safety, first responder, and that's really where I got my start. In high school, I had thought about being a fire protection engineer. Not really good with math. But when I came out of high school, I was offered a job with the sheriff's office to be a police dispatcher.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I fell in love with law enforcement from the first day I walked on the job there. But being a volunteer firefighter, never had to give up the volunteer fire service, and I could be a full-time police officer, and I had the best of both worlds. And I tell you, the career opportunities that both of those jobs gave me was phenomenal.
Pretty translatable skills.
Very translatable skills, and so many different levels too. Many that the kids don't realize. You think of a firefighter as just someone going in to put the fire out, but a firefighter is really an engineer. They have to understand the science of fire. Police officers, you think, I'm going to arrest a bad guy. Yes, that's true, but you have to understand the law. You have to understand family dynamics, psychology, sociology, all pretty key ingredients to moving your career forward in so many directions.
Yeah, I could see that. Now, there's a big... I don't know how true it is, but police versus fire, little rivalry between the two different.
Yeah. The rivalry's there, and it's a lot of fun. But I will tell you, when trouble's brewing and critical incidents occur, the one thing that police and fire department have, much like the military is, you always know you have the other person's back. It doesn't matter. The color of the uniform doesn't matter when you're saving lives or when you're trying to suppress a critical event. But the rivalry's always there, in both ways,
It's like with brothers,
Yes.
I've got 3 brothers, and I will be the first to make fun of them any given opportunity. But if they call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm not even asking questions. I'm going to go help out whatever needs to be done.
Yeah, same exact thing. There's just a bond there that only police and fire really understand, and it's unbreakable.
So, Eddie, you are the town administrator of Bel Air.
Yes.
What does the town administrator do? What are roles, responsibilities, and how do you help the town?
Great job, great question, because very few people know that job exists in its title.
Right.
So the town administrator is basically the person that manages the town on a day-to-day basis. The 5 elected commissioners for the town of Bel Air are my bosses. They are the ones who hire me to do the job. Operationally, I oversee 6 departments within town government, which mainly is the police department, the Department of Public Works, finance and administration, economic development, planning and zoning, and administration. Have roughly 100 employees. So my job then is to manage the town, to basically work with these 6 skilled professionals to determine how do we take care of the town on a daily basis.
Right.
Everything from literally fixing a pothole to maybe going through the development regulations for a multi-million-dollar project, to help attracting businesses, to making sure that the criminals are apprehended when crimes are committed in town and make sure community's safe. That's my job. A secondary role to that, which is not often seen, is to work with all of our partners in the community. There's so many partners in the town of Bel Air, from the fire service to the Bel Air Downtown Alliance, Board of Education, Harford County government, nonprofits like Lassos, for example, or the Library Foundation.
Right.
So my job is to partner also with these folks for the betterment of the citizens within the town limits of Bel Air, the town.
Yeah, and to take a step back, we've talked before about the role of government, and I think federal government certainly now is getting a lot of attention. And then you have the states, but then you have local, and really the amount of impact, I think, and some might disagree, but the local municipalities have far greater impact than I think most people really think about.
Yes.
Right? Boots on the ground kind of thing.
Exactly. Municipal government is, in my estimation, the truest form of government because it's the government closest to the people. That's not a knock on my state, county, or federal colleagues whatsoever.
Right.
But municipal government is community government. It's neighbor helping neighbor. I have lived in my Bel Air town, I've lived in the town of Bel Air my entire life.
Right.
I know most everyone in town or have had some sort of connection with them. I'm in a position now where not only where I know them as friends, but I know that I have the ability to help them to mitigate a problem. It's far easier to fix problems when you know the people you're dealing with than it is when you're dealing with a stranger.
Right.
Think about it in business. If you were to bring someone in that you know, they're going to sit down and you're going to work more closely with them because you already know each other.
Relationships.
They're going to have an inherent trust in you. Whereas if you have someone you never met before as a client, they're going to have to build a trust with your relationship with you. So municipal government for me is that relationship. It goes back, I had to have relationships in public safety. It carries over into municipal government. Same idea, same concept.
Yeah. I wish there were more relationships throughout all branches of government, but that's a topic for maybe a different day. One thing I thought was interesting, and I went through Harford Leadership Academy at the community college, and for those that may not be aware of it, it's kind of like field trips for all the different parts, education, law enforcement, so on and so forth. I got shot with a taser by one of the deputies. It was fun for them, not for me. We had a good laugh over it, but one of the things that I found very interesting is how government works locally. And you go through school, and I'm sure at some point I had a teacher that told me about it, but most of the focus is on state or maybe federal. Specifically, we have the town of Bel Air. It's an incorporated town.
Yes.
We have Aberdeen in the county, incorporated, and Havre de Grace. How does one town become incorporated, and why wouldn't, say, a Fallston or an Edgewood or some other type of town? Why haven't we had new ones over time as things have grown?
Right. Well, the three towns here were obviously incorporated back in the middle 1800s. Bel Air just experienced its 150th anniversary. There has been talk about various jurisdictions in the county, such as, for example, Fallston, Edgewood, other communities that aren't incorporated, to become incorporated. But that requires the consent and will of the people to want to form that. That also requires those individuals to create their own government body, to create a taxable base, to create their own police and fire department and other services that are required. In other words, build the infrastructure to support your voting residents. Now, if you look at Edgewood specifically, I remember over the many, many decades that Edgewood is probably one of the largest, if not the largest, non-incorporated community in Harford County with over 30,000 plus people. That's larger than the town of Bel Air. Bel Air has 10,600 residents. So when you look at in the municipal limits,
10,000, interesting.
Right. So you move to a place like Edgewood. They have a commercial and economic infrastructure. How do they build upon that? So it takes basically the will of the people to create an infrastructure and create the government, and then certainly some of this would have to go through state government as well to have those approvals as well.
Right.
But it starts grassroots. It starts with building an infrastructure.
Yeah. Why would you think some of what has been stopping other towns from incorporating?
Probably, if I had to guess, it is, I think at face value and probably with the work that's involved, it's an overwhelming job to do that. Think about when
that's a lot of cats to herd.
It is a lot of cats to herd, and a lot of putting in place things that were much easier when Bel Air was 50 buildings and maybe 200 residents.
Right.
So you think back in 1874, and even before that, as Bel Air was growing, we were small back then. We only had one or two streets, a handful of buildings, and a handful of citizens. Creating something from that endeavor probably seemed overwhelming to them.
Right.
But it was small. They started small and they built. I think it would just in today's world, I know this kind of getting a little long with the answer, but in today's world, it's just a lot of overwhelming work that would take to bring this all together.
A little bit more complicated nowadays than back then.
A little more complicated than back then, yes.
And you have social media now.
Yes.
Which I'm sure is every town commissioner's favorite platform. Or anyone in government or some type of public service, right? Everyone has an opinion. Not everybody needs to share it all the time, but...
social media can be a blessing, and it can also be an albatross around your neck at the same time.
Right.
I think the ability to share information and share messaging and communicate with people is extremely important. But I also think it provides a platform that sadly sometimes is more often than not used to spread misinformation or to encourage opinions that may not be totally accurate. And I think when you put that kind of messaging out there that's unvetted, unverified, it leads people who may be susceptible to believing that that's the truth down a different path of believing how something should get done.
Right.
And then it creates angst and animosity where it's not necessary.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good segue. So, communication. So, obviously, there's Facebook. I think most people's interactions with the town, your town, any town, I should say our town, it's just complaining on Facebook groups. But what are the best ways to get in touch with Bel Air? We mentioned at one point, a tree that's ripping up some of the sidewalk. Instead of just going to the local Harford County whatever group and posting about something, what's the best way to get in touch and go through those proper avenues?
I think it's going back old school. I think it's actually picking up the phone and calling the town hall and asking, can I speak to the person who can take care of a dead tree?
Right.
Because so many times I see on social media, someone will say, there's a tree down, who should I call? Or they're expecting that that somebody will know the number of town hall right off the top of their head and without really researching it. Or they're thinking that we're monitoring all these various chat groups and we'll automatically see that they have a problem and mitigate that problem. It's not the case. Really, old school, pick up the phone, call us, tell us your problem so we can hook you up. That's the essence of municipal government, is you calling me in a one-on-one conversation to accomplish a given task.
Right. That's the benefit of small town. You can get things done,
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Because if you're posting something on social media and you're not really looking up the right information, it just opens up a Pandora's box of so much information that's not true, unverified. It's just bad information. And it doesn't solve your problem any quicker. Social media sometimes, I think, slows the resolution to a problem down, when if you just pick the phone up and call us at town hall, you'll get us.
Isn't that funny? And this just might be off topic a little bit, but I think that's kind of human nature now, where we do have so much access to information. We'll have group chats socially, and people say, what's the phone number for XYZ restaurant? We're like, Google it. Did you even look?
Yep.
People just expect things to be done.
Right.
Eddie, you've seen Bel Air grow. We've talked about growth. That's a reoccurring theme. And there's good and bad with everything.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you've seen change the most?
Bel Air has become bigger and busier, which creates more people coming through town, which creates congestion, and sometimes creates a strain on infrastructure.
Right.
It's one of those things that it's been around for decades. It's the congestion we have really didn't start last year or 2 years ago. It actually probably started 25 or 30 years ago as we began to grow. And engineers at the time were trying to design a traffic system or a system of moving through town that made things easier. And it works for a time, but as we continue to grow, which kind of goes back to the idea, sometimes you're a victim of your success.
Right.
I'm very proud of the town. I'm very proud of our businesses, of the people that live here, and the things that we do. But when you're good and you get better, other people say, oh my gosh, I really like that. I want to go live there.
Right.
Why would I deny them that chance? But when they move here, that means whether it's a family of 2, 4, 6, or 8, those people come to town, and then that grows our town. So it becomes a really nagging question, and it's a good question, and it's not an easy question to answer, because people want to live here, but people who are here believe that people who are coming creates congestion and problems. People who want to live here because what we have created for them is a community where they want to live.
Right.
It's a really difficult question to address. And one of the answers is, do you balanced planning? How do you plan and do it balanced so that you can grow incrementally and your critical infrastructure meets it? But sometimes you can be so good at something that people just want to be a part of it, and they move here so quickly that growth can't keep up with that.
Right.
So I'm not sure that answered your question, but it's a change that I've seen that's happened, that I'm proud of what we've made Bel Air, but it's also a little frightening. It might be scary because a lot of people want to come live here, which is good, but the more people come live here, the more we grow, and then sometimes the more bureaucratic you will become, because government has to get bigger, critical infrastructure has to get bigger.
Right.
And you see what I'm saying? So
I think the goal is to be able to accommodate more growth without increasing the cost too much, still being somewhat affordable. And I know that that's a very obscure definition these days, but keeping the heart and the essence of it.
Exactly.
How important do you think Main Street Bel Air is to the community at large?
Oh, I think Main Street's huge.
Yeah.
I think Main Street is the core of any community. Our downtown, and this is not a knock on any of our businesses in the greater portion of the town of Bel Air.
Sure.
Our downtown is extremely family friendly. It's extremely still old school. The buildings, except for a few, really haven't altered their appearance too much from what they were 50 to 100 years ago. They've just been improved upon. There's a walking part of it. There's an economic part of it. There's a really cool vibe of being downtown on Main Street, just to be able to move about through the restaurants. Main Street Bel Air is still like Main Street was from when I was growing up. You see people, you know people, and you actually engage in physical conversations.
Right.
Main Street's great. I will not take anything away from Main Street, and I'm proud of the people over the years that have tried to keep Main Street the way it is.
Right.
And work to keep it very family friendly, very cordial.
Yeah. I love Main Street. Obviously, we have an office on Main Street. I wouldn't say the downtown corridor, but and the Soapbox Derby race.
Yes,
my
for
son
sure.
last year,
Yes,
champion.
yep.
This year, we won't talk about it.
Congratulations,
It didn't go the way we thought, but we had fun. There were
Yeah.
smiles, even though we weren't winning. That was such a great event.
Yeah.
How did that come to happen?
That came about. There was a meeting in town. I forget the actual meeting, but there were the right people in the room where sidebar conversation says, what do you think about having a derby, soapbox derby?
Right.
And the person said, I don't know. They said, do you think that's something that the Lions Club would want to take on? The guy says, I don't know. Let me take it back.
Right.
Again, one of those conversations, much like you and I sitting here talking, and the member from the Lions Club took it back to his group, and everybody said, we like that idea. And from there, it grew wheels, literal race wheels, and then it has become extremely popular again.
Yes.
I lived in town, Bel Air, when the original soapbox derbies were held back in the 60s. The winner of the first race is a very good friend of mine. To live back in that time, Joe, and see Bel Air then and see what we're doing again with the derby is just, the only thing that really has changed is 40 years, 50 years.
Right.
The camaraderie, the spirit, the family, the friendliness, everything has come back with this derby. So the Lions Club took it as a project and then researched it, just amazingly researched it, and then put it in play.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't entered many derby races, so I only have a sample size of one organization, but the Lions Club, the work they do, they were phenomenal and organized. Safety was number 1, 2, and 3 priority. It is such a good event. I thought that was so cool.
It is, and they from being working in emergency services, I worked in emergency management, so I'm always planning for disasters. Watching them plan was very much akin to what I did in disaster planning. Was that they had plans for everything, and the logistics of it was worked out. They took everything into consideration, from how this would impact the businesses to being respectful of state highways for the amount of time we closed the road down, to making sure, as you said, heavy emphasis on safety, following the rules, making sure the car weights were balanced properly and the timing clocks worked, and no one had an undue edge in the competition, for example.
Right.
Just an amazing amount of work.
And we tested that. We looked at all the different corners and how we could cut them, but there weren't any, so we had to fight fair.
I saw many a race driver walking that course last week.
Our wheel fell off the first year.
I remember.
It was but it wasn't my kid. It was my buddy's daughter. So I was like, first thing first, is the car okay? He's like, what? We have a dark sense of humor, but no, everybody was fine. I knew that ahead of time.
I remember. I saw the crash. I saw the car stay upright. Your driver handled themselves immaculately.
Yeah, apparently cotter pins need to stay in so the wheels stay on. So we learned that first year. That we haven't lost any wheels, knock on wood, since then.
But going back to your original point, that's an example of partnerships that we want to build. And, the Lions Club and I, we're all on a first-name basis. We all work together well. Those are great relationships. And those relationships then further extend themselves into other community endeavors. So when you talk about town government, you build relationships with people like that. The Lions Club must have 50 people. Every one of those 50 people is another relationship that we can build to work on to improve some other aspect of Bel Air. It doesn't matter what it is, just whatever aspect we want to improve. Someone has an idea on how to do that.
Right.
And those relationships are key to that.
I want to switch gears slightly because we're talking about growth, and obviously we could go. There's a lot that we can talk about that Bel Air has to offer, much longer than we have time today. One, I don't want to say controversial. Everyone has strong opinions, one way or the other, with it, but is zoning.
Yes.
And its growth you can call it smart growth or balanced growth, or not everybody's going to agree on it because there's 10,000 people in the town that have 10,000 different opinions. But let's say the time to raise your voice, or I should say speak up, not raise your voice, but just have a voice, probably, in my opinion, is not in the Facebook comments section of something that says this is going to approval. At that point, it's already done.
Yeah.
Practically. So for folks that want a voice and actually affect a change in the future of the planning of Bel Air and Harford County, what should those folks do rather than waiting until the approval's already pretty much been guaranteed?
That's a great question. And let me preface my comments recognizing that the town has been at the heart of some of these changes that have not been necessarily liked by a large number of people. But I do respect opinions on both sides of the aisle because I grew up here. So these people who have concerns, I understand their concerns.
They're neighbors.
They're friends. The people who want to grow the building, I understand they're looking for an economic opportunity. I understand that. But the key here is planning. Planning is one of those things. We talk about planning, an outing for the 4th of July, or we're planning our vacation. Those things are fun. They're sexy. They're really cool things we want to do with our family. But planning has a much larger connotation in this world, which means you have to plan for disasters. You have to plan for all kinds of things. Planning here means you have to plan for what you want your community to look like. So as you and I talked off camera before we started, there's a little bit of a gap in our ages. So I know what Bel Air was like when I was, 25 or 30. I know what I wanted it to look like.
Right.
So I would ask you rhetorically, what do you want Bel Air to look like for you as you get older and your business?
Right.
What do you want to look like for your children? So if you want Bel Air to look different or you want it to stay the same, the key is looking at what is in the development regulations and state, county, and municipal law now that impacts whether or not the area is going to be zoned the way you want it to be zoned, or what's going to be built. What's going to be built is what you want to be built, and that's not sexy. Reading our development codes, like I mentioned to you earlier, reading War and Peace is way more exciting than reading our development codes. They're just dry and they're difficult. Government regulations can be complex. Mm-hmm. It takes a while to understand them, and in many cases there are volumes of case law that have supported the defense of those regulations as they exist today. So the shorter answer to your question would be, for someone who wants to affect change, they want something to remain the way it is now, or the way it was, take it back.
Right.
You have to look at the development regulations. You have to determine, and then what it is you want, and then start affecting the change now. Start working with your elected officials, your planning and zoning officials, because planning and zoning officials follow the letter of the law. People may not think they do. People may think that their decisions are arbitrary and capricious, or their decisions are made to benefit a specific body. But no, they're following the way the codes were written. And
how often do the codes change?
The codes, there is every 10 years, there's a comprehensive rezoning plan in the town of Bel Air, where you can go in and properties can be rezoned and things revisited. But more importantly, rather than the zoning, you can change the regulations, the development regulations as they exist. So if you want a particular parcel or property to have a smaller density of people who can reside there, or maybe you don't want that piece of property to have a certain business on it, you look at those laws now, you look at those codes now and say, okay, how can I change this? I'll give you a great example. We had a business opportunity that was offered to the town of Bel Air about 2 months ago.
Okay.
Person wanted to bring in a gun range to the town. He found an open building that would safely accommodate an indoor gun range.
Okay.
We had nothing on the books to support that. So there was no indication of how that would fall. Could it go there? Can it not go there? What are the requirements and regulations? So very quickly, the elected officials started working. They directed us, because this was a missed business opportunity,
right,
to start crafting a code that would fall in line with other jurisdictions, maybe mirror other jurisdictions, to allow this business to come to town. Now, there were some people in the public that did not want this, and they voiced that, and some people did. But the idea was brought to us. We then, within 90 days, we now have a code on the book that allows a gun range to locate in the town of Bel Air, and there's safety regulations, development regulations,
right,
everything that you want all set up.
Yeah.
That's because they wanted a business. So it only took 90 days. It doesn't take much. If you have your eye on the prize, eye on the target that you want to accomplish,
right?
The codes can be changed. Pun intended. Yes, exactly. I didn't think about that. Good catch. You can make that happen, but people have to take that initiative and to understand that, and they have to understand that change takes time.
Yeah.
That's why you need to start now. Right. And many cases, I used to tell people, when you see a sign go up that says a building's coming up or property for zoning hearing, it's that little square yellow line.
Right.
You have to pay attention. That is the time, really before then. That's the key time to really start getting involved about what's going to happen with that parcel of property.
Right.
But again,
so let's say that no, this is great, and I think a lot of people that live in the area or in any area, really, this is translatable to any community. I've got a family of 5. I live just north of Bel Air. I have an office here. Where would I go if I would like to be involved in what the future planning and zoning, so that, say, I can watch my grandkids race down Main Street in my soapbox derby car, which may or may not have any wheels left because they'll be years and years of use.
There's probably the first stop along the way would be to attend the planning commission meetings that are held once a month.
Yeah.
Those are public meetings people can attend, and some of them are public hearings where you can ask questions and voice either opposition or support of a particular project coming to town. Okay. But you get a chance to listen to people who are offering up projects, and you start to hear the nomenclature, you see the process, you see what they want to do, and you're thinking, wow, would I like that in my community? I'm not sure.
Right.
Gives you a chance, give you pause. Now, granted, you may not be able to have impact on the first 2 or 3 projects that you listen to because there's a learning curve.
Right.
But there's going to be that 4th, 5th, or 25th project that comes along that's going to say, wait a minute, I don't want that. And here's why I don't want that. And here's the way I can change that. Not to mention the fact, remember, it's municipal government. You start attending the planning commission meetings on a regular basis. The board sees you. You might have a chance to ask a question and participate. They start recognizing who you are. Now you have a relationship with them where you might be able to talk to them or talk to the planning and zoning official for the town and ask them a question to explain something to you.
Right.
Many people don't do that. I'm amazed at the number of people who are upset about something, but they've not called town hall to ask what is the process or why this has occurred or what's the case law that supports this decision that was made. Instead, they sometimes the information is, well, so-and-so told me that it was illegal, so therefore it must be illegal.
Right.
That's where it gets frustrating at times because, no, the case law says X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But back to your point, attending those commission meetings is a good place to start. Bel Air has about a dozen committees that people can get either attend or participate or volunteer and serve on, which would give them a greater information, greater education, greater opportunity to know how the town of Bel Air functions and understand its inner workings.
So before we move on to a different topic, for folks that are interested in getting more information in town, where can they go to get more involved and get more information?
It's an awesome question. I appreciate you asking. I took this idea from a colleague of mine in municipal government who created a Citizens Academy. Now, they call it a different name, but in town, I've created what's called the Municipal Citizens Academy, where he had our inaugural class last fall. We had 7 students, which was great. I was happy with. But it's an opportunity for people to come to town hall for 7 to 8 weeks, 2 hours a night, 1 night a week, and learn about town government from the person who is there, the department head, the person who's in charge of the topic for that evening. So, for example, if you're going to do economic development, my economic development director will spend 2 hours or longer talking to you about what economic development means for the town of Bel Air. How do you bring a business to town? How do you sustain a business? The Armory Marketplace, things of that nature. If you want to talk about law enforcement, same thing. You can talk to the police chief about all the crime, or I shouldn't say all the crime, because Bel Air really boasts a very low crime rate. But for the crime that we do have, how do I deal with that? How do I report it? How do I prevent it? So all of these questions that you have in the back of your mind that are nagging questions, I have an academy for you to come to, and it's a very relaxed atmosphere. We hold it in the police community room at Town Hall, and all my directors are there, and we'll also have a night with the commissioners.
So when is that?
The next one we're in the process of scheduling it now, but it will be this fall. Now, we're typically trying to cater to our town residents, so we try to make sure that everyone's over 18 and everyone is either a resident of the town or has a business in town.
Okay.
But as I watch the numbers, I can make some exceptions. For example, I'm trying to involve more Eagle Scouts, both Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts who need merit badges in community government to maybe attend this class. But these are just opportunities. And you can ask hard, frank questions, and it's such a casual, relaxed environment, it's a much easier learning environment.
Yeah.
And there's no animosity between someone who's opposed to something and government who may not be able to, who may be behind allowing something to happen because they legally are required to.
Right from the horse's mouth.
Exactly.
You get to see how the machine works, and then you can be involved to help influence however you think would be best for the community.
It's an opportunity. It's like school. It's basically if you're a professor in school, there's no question off the table. Same thing here. My department heads are professors. You're the student. Ask the department head the question that is really nagging you, like, how can I affect change? If I don't want a certain project to happen, what do I need to do to change the ordinances that would affect that? Or if I want to create a neighborhood watch in my community, how do I do that? I want to build a business. What does that mean?
Right.
These are the experts. And
it all comes down to relationships. That's like the recurring theme. It's so funny. And whether it's government, financial planning, the people you work with, whatever job out there, that is the core root of most everything.
For sure.
Relationships. That's how stuff gets done. So go start developing a relationship with your communities. And if you don't live in Bel Air, find whatever the equivalent is for where you do live.
Building a relationship means it's much easier to have a conversation with someone because because when you build a relationship, you're building trust over time.
Right.
Not simply for
it's
the first
investing.
time. It's investing, for sure. And investing for the long terms pays dividends. I mean, obviously, you're in the investment business with retirement planning. So
in our world, I'm sure it's other worlds, but there's a saying that you don't harvest the crop the day you plant the seeds.
That's correct.
Right? So if you want a growing influence and voice and how things go in your local municipality, you got to invest and plant some seeds of relationships.
Absolutely. Well, I would tell your listeners, keep an eye on our webpage. I'm looking at dates now in the fall to host the class. And then, again, we try to limit the class to 20. Now, last year was our first time. We had 10 people, 3 were unable to show, so we went with 7 people.
Right.
And it actually provided a very warm, intimate experience for everyone where you could actually have great conversations.
Very cool. Let's go to a lighter topic.
Sure.
Fun topic. I don't know what could be more fun than learning about your local municipal government and how it works, but we'll attempt to do that.
Yeah.
So, Eddie, you've been around Harford County for a while. What is one of your favorite things that is no longer around? What's something from old Harford County that was one of your favorites?
It's actually hiking the old Ma and Pa Railroad bed.
Yeah.
Parks and Recreation has done wonders with the Ma and Pa Trail as is constructed. But growing up here and knowing where the trails actually went versus where they went because of right-of-ways and easements, way different, way big time. Being able to go to the carnivals that we used to have that were big and back then with the racetrack back in the days before Harford Mall.
That's right.
So these were all just amazing things and just so much fun to do as a kid.
And across the racetrack, was it Bessie?
Yeah, no. Actually, Betsy was on Baltimore Pike where Chili's is now. And of course, I grew up in the community where Bessie's owner lived, so it was kind of neat to watch her, to know the story and to know the man who owned her, and to recognize what an institution she was and what she represented to the town of Bel Air.
And for anyone watching that doesn't know Bessie, which is probably 99% of the people watching, there was this famous cow that would greet everybody coming in or leaving Bel Air and kind of became a mascot of town, right?
That's right, yeah.
And now that location is where Chili's is.
Yep.
Does Chili's have some type of cow-related memorabilia
No,
somewhere?
I think maybe Applebee's or one of the other stores probably had a picture of her at some point, and there's one floating around the Historical Society. But
can we do a town ordinance or make them put like a figure of a cow? Maybe we take it from Chick-fil-A and bring it over?
It would be cool to do that because she represented, and actually I keep calling her Bessie, it was Betsy.
Okay.
She was such the picture of a bucolic society. In the middle of all mayhem, Harford Mall, Bel Air Shopping Center, Tollgate Town Center, and then of course the businesses at Atwood and Baltimore Pike, stood this acre field barbed wire fence, and she's in the middle of it. And it just, you went from what was, this huge economic development and boom, and it reminds you, oh my God, Bel Air was rural at one point in time. Yeah. I mean, at one point in time, there was probably 4 or 5 other Betsy's by other names in that same field. She was the last one standing.
Right.
And it just, every time I see that, I mean, think about something like sights and sounds and smells that
bring you back in time.
Bring you back in time. She is that. When I think about that, I remember when Baltimore Pike was 2 lanes both ways. When Main Street's with 2-way. Bond Street, 2-way.
Right.
All those things, just that's what brings back for me. So it brings back times of growing up on Main Street when my friends and I would all help Dr. Street from Boyd and Fulford and Captain Jim, may he rest in peace, hang the Christmas lights.
Yeah.
We went light to light, standing on step ladders and stuff, and that was just what Bel Air was about, and that's where I formed many of my relationships as kids. Many of those kids I grew up with are now business people in the community with long-standing relationships, and they're great colleagues and friends and good sounding boards. And it's that's what I'm hoping generations in Bel Air see now that grow up, that grasp that same sense of relationship.
That's a great segue. So let's fast forward to Harford County / Bel Air now. What are some of your favorite things that you've seen that are in today's time? Changes or bring it into the...
Couple of things. One, I like institutions like Liriodendron and Ledoux that are recognized for their history, and people have banded together to bring those iconic pieces of history into the 21st century and let us all share in them. I love the various waterways in the county that, with environmental controls, have improved and made them, cleaner, healthier, hikeable, walkable, where you can enjoy them. Those are the things I like. I'm very much into the nature thing. Yeah, our horse farms between Country Life Farms and Bonita Farms and others. Right. It just my father trained jumpers when he was a young man in the 1930s, and horse country was everything to him. So I kind of inherited that, my love of that from him. So seeing those horse farms still continue to thrive and be a part of our community, I think, are just wonderful. And then the things that Harford has done with their waterfronts, attracting people to just some marvelous venues down in Harford along the water is just simply amazing.
Yeah. I was hoping you were going to say the renovation at 510 South Main, but I guess those are good answers too. All right, very serious question for you. 4th of July, parade. Obviously, it's a big deal for us. It's a big deal for the town. When is too soon to put your tarps and blankets out?
Oh, my goodness. I think that's actually more controversial than some of the zoning regulations we've had to fight. Usually 24 hours is probably the magic mark.
Right.
It's one of those things where the 4th of July parade is a great endeavor, and it also has become a little problematic in a sense. It's become really good. And good's a good thing, right?
Right.
But it means it brings in thousands of people. We see over, in some cases, 50, 60,000 people in town that weekend or on those days. So usually 24 hours. And we simply ask people to be cognizant because technically by town code, the sidewalks are not supposed to be blocked.
Right.
But people go out, they put their chairs, they tape their tarp down. So we think that's, as long as people are respectable and responsible, because we still have to allow ingress and egress from the businesses and also egress across the sidewalks. So typically 24 hours.
It's important to mention, not everybody can just step over chairs.
That's correct.
There's mobility issues for folks that need to be accommodated.
People need to be cognizant of that. Yeah. And I think for the most part, most people are. I think when you start going 36 to 48 hours out, I think there comes the potential for it may incite people for vandalism or theft, which is not always appreciated. It also creates the possibility that chairs fall over, they blow into the street, blow into the sidewalk. Get a windstorm. So I think people that 24 hours in advance, I mean, I've seen it grow. I remember when it was 12 hours. Right. But 24 hours I think is not unreasonable.
So as you probably know, we get bleachers that we put in the front yard. Mm-hmm. They're not blown around.
Nope, they're not blown around.
And I remember Bel Air does they go out and kind of goof on all the different chairs and things out there, local Facebook group. And someone in the comment section, and this was when I couldn't begin to describe how big a smile this put on my face. They were like, I was going down Main Street and forget the chairs. Somebody put bleachers in their front yard. Yep. I was like, that's us.
Yes.
That's us.
That harkens back to, again, I know we've talked about it a lot on your podcast today, but That's just the community, you know.
Yeah.
When people think that we've lost a sense of what Bel Air is about.
Right.
Go to the 4th of July parade, and you actually see community come out.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It really is simply amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
what you do here is another iteration of what we did. My friends and I used to back our pickup trucks together for the kids to run back and forth. We put grills in the back.
Yeah.
It was our form of bleachers.
Right.
But now you've actually put bleachers there. So it's the next iteration of what you want your community to look like and how you want your community to be involved. I think it's
But anything I'm involved with tends to go a little bit overboard. But I had this vision because I love Harford County. I grew up here. I'm raising my family here. I've got the business here. I'm all in. And I had this vision when I bought this building. It wasn't an ideal time. It was just a difficult time to make that decision. But I said, you know what, leap of faith, let's do it. And my vision was standing on the front porch, watching kids with fireworks on the face. We have a face painter that comes, and it's families, it's community, it's small town Americana. You got the fire trucks and the bands, and it's just everybody is all smiles, and it's just such a great patriotic local small town event, and I just look forward to it every year. So,
well, it's good that you brought that up because I think one of the things I would want your listeners to think about too, we keep talking about change. Many of our committee members are getting older. People that have started these institutions now started 40 plus years ago. That's amazing. Most people don't last in jobs that long. We have volunteers who are doing this on the behalf of the town. So we're always looking for up-and-coming people to join these communities, to get involved. Because once again, getting involved in something like the 4th of July Committee also initiates you into town government. You get to learn more about what happens in town government, how we help support get this event off the ground, how other partners and stakeholders get it off the ground.
Right.
So I would encourage your listeners, if they are so inclined, some committees are required to have resident status in town, others do not. But if something appeals to them, we are looking for volunteers to serve on these committees because those people help chart the growth for the next iteration of what Bel Air will be.
Right. Very important. Favorite pet-friendly spot for Poppy, Milo, and Bear?
Wow. Got a couple. Probably have to say the Mont Paw Trail. I think walking the trail for a couple reasons. One, because I get to stop at a local brewery at the end of the walk, maybe even the start of the walk.
Right.
But they pretty much enjoy the neighborhood and the walks on the trails. I think we see a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of other dogs. Not so much at dog parks. They just enjoy the trails.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Eddie, what website do we go to? How do we get in touch with the town of Bel Air?
Sure. Town of Bel Air has its own Facebook page. Obviously, and a web page as well, just townofbelair.gov. .org, excuse me, and the Facebook page, of course, is Town of Bel Air. Something else for your viewers to keep in mind, we live stream all of our public meetings.
Yeah.
So if you can attend, you can watch them from the comfort of your recliner chair in your living room and tune in and see town government actually at work, which is what we were happy for. This really, in reaching the public, live streaming what we do now, was very transparent.
Yeah.
It also allows people to go back and re-listen to something maybe they missed before. So YouTube, all the media platforms we're on, but Facebook and YouTube are probably going to get you the most information, and then the webpage will give you most of the history and the applications and the fillable forms that you will need to apply for something or to submit something.
Perfect. Eddie, thanks so much for coming in here and spending
Thanks for
time
having me.
with us.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome.